It's June 7th, 2022, and you're listening to the Beer Temple Podcast.
This is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again.
Hello, and welcome to the Beer Temple Podcast. I am your host, one of your hosts, your co-host. You do the intro so much better than I do, Mike. But I'm Chris Quinn, and my co-host is Mike Shalau.
How's it going?
Going all right. I botched the entry or whatever. I also botched the opening as well. You weren't here for that. You were cooling down a bottle of Lambic.
There's a first time for everything on this show, so botching something, I'm glad we got it out of the way on show 298 or whatever this is.
Yeah, something close to that. Yeah, well, thanks everyone for tuning in, downloading, however you listen to the podcast. For those of you listening on 105.5 FM, WLPN, thank you. Lumpin' Radio, thanks to Lumpin' Radio as well. Thanks to the Fade Master.
Best.
For fading it in.
Best in the biz.
I mean, I think he's only had one mess up fade ever. I'm being serious here. I think he did have one mess. He's shaking his head. No, I think there was one.
He's
one
holding up a
blown
sign that
fade.
says "I am the goat."
Yeah, exactly.
Or is it a foat? The fadiest of all time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Can't be faded. Oh yeah. Hold my drink.
Yeah,
that's what Serge says.
Right.
Yeah, we haven't been on with each other for a few weeks.
For a while, yeah.
Yeah. But it's good we got an old fashioned roundtable going. Mm-hmm. Should be good.
Great one.
Yeah.
A murderer's row.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
They're all murderers row, though.
Exactly.
Yeah, you guys are
We
killing people.
only have the best. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything new with you?
Yeah, we got some fun beers coming out. Some beers that took us like 2.5 years to make, like a mixed culture saison called Levan.
That doesn't sound fun. That sounds excruciating and stressful.
It's fun until you also have to put on your business person hat and be like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done.
Time equals money.
Yeah. But we have a couple of variants, some with yuzu that we overnighted from New Jersey, which again is fun until you put on your business person hat. Mm-hmm. And one with some cherries, Montmorency cherries. From
you drove it overnight from New Jersey, I assume. That's how you got it.
I wish. That would have been cheaper.
Right.
We also got some more of those like mugs from our artist made. Mm-hmm. New versions this year, which is another thing that's very cool until he invoices you for all the time that he had spent in the Netherlands and France learning how to make make mugs really well.
Exactly.
But yeah, he actually just quit his part-time day job to be full-time
mug maker for his
professional artist. Yeah. So I need you guys to check out our website and buy tickets to this event. But no, he quit his job to be professional artist full-time. He was like an admin for some pottery studios, but now he's just full-time artist.
Nice.
Joe Kraft, check him out on Instagram.
Very cool.
Joseph Carl Kraft.
Yeah. Dig it. Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, he's awesome too. He stopped by today, dropped the mugs off, and they look fantastic.
Nice. We'll get into our panel very quickly, but the time equals money thing reminded me of some of the stuff we were talking about with just a guy I know, friend. I don't know. It's hard. It's weird calling people friends or not, but guy I know in the industry, Tim Faith. Formerly of Goose, he's now at White Claw, and some of the stuff we were talking about. We have to have him on, I think. So I don't want to say too much, but
yeah, tanks are a thing of the past, I think.
Yeah, talking about time is money. They must make a lot of money based on how much time it takes them to fill a can of White Claw, based on what he was saying.
Is it a lot of time, Chris? Is it a lot of time?
I think they're doing 60, 32 for 7,500 cans a minute, I think.
Mm-hmm. That's about average.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a lot in a little bit of time.
Yeah, so I think for today's roundtable, you should introduce yourself with how fast your canning line moves.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't you go first? How fast does your canning line move, Mike?
0.
Ah, okay.
All bottles, baby. It's what the kids want.
Yeah. Yeah, so we should get into it. We can maybe talk a little bit more about it, but I was fascinated by the brewing process
It blew
and
my
the
mind, as
scale
you were telling me.
of White Claw's brewery.
Yeah.
I think the largest to have been built in 40 years, he said. Massive
alcohol
place.
production facility, I would.
Yeah,
I mean,
not just facility.
It can't really be a brewery, right? They're not really like brewing anything.
Well,
They're dissolving and injecting. And
what counts as brewing? I mean,
I
there's
think
fermentation.
Steeping must be an important part of brewing. No,
I don't know.
I don't know.
Whatever.
You guys write in. What is brewing?
Yeah, we'll get to that. Anyway,
This is the existential episode.
yeah. Let's get to our guests. We're going to do a round table, a nice, small, concise round table. It'll be cool. And we're going to start out in order of seniority, like we always do, with whoever's been on the most being introduced first. And we've got, a big name as far as Beer Temple podcasts go. I don't know anywhere else. I'm not so sure, but as far as Beer Temple podcasts go, big name. That's Mr.
The biggest.
Yeah, Nostradouglas Veliky. What's up?
Hey guys, thanks for having me back.
How are you?
Pretty good.
Well, a lot's new with you since you've been on last, but what's new? You're at CBC, right?
I was at CBC, yep. I spent the whole week in Minnesota, and right now it's kind of a mix of scrambling to do things for this year, but also trying to plan for 2023. We have tons of collaborations in the works, and I kind of wind up the de facto project manager of making sure everything happens on time with those. So we've got a bunch of those coming out pretty fast and furious from here on out.
Nice.
It's fun.
And you did like a social media panel or something or what didn't you do a panel about something like that at CBC? Or am I completely wrong?
John Hall and Andy Crouch. Andy Crouch was the moderator. John Hall was kind of behind the scenes. They had a panel on very general, like state of the industry, kind of touched on multitude of topics. It was at Fulton Brewery in Minneapolis.
Okay. I don't know this for a fact, and I'm sure it's not true. Just a nasty rumor. Whenever you get industry people together, a lot of rumors start swirling around. But rumor has it, Mike, that Doug didn't mention our podcast during the panel, but I don't believe it.
I can't believe that at all.
Yeah. So we'll leave that one unsolved because I
apologize.
think we know.
I'm used to getting introduced as Doug from the Beer Temple podcast, and they
everywhere,
they
even at like
slipped
Thanksgiving
up.
dinner.
Yeah, you'd think they would have used that for credibility, but they slipped up, and then I was frazzled, and I apologize. I take responsibility.
It's okay.
As you should, yes.
You get one strike. You get one strike. But
you get one strike about 1,000 times for this show.
Now, I'm going to introduce Doug. Whenever I have an opportunity to introduce Doug, now I will say this is Doug from the Beer Temple podcast, regardless of the situation. So it'll be
First and
pretty funny.
foremost.
Yeah, like he'll come over and I don't know, meet my brother or something. Anything else new with you, Doug? I mean, you just listed a whole bunch of new stuff, but
That'll do it.
okay, cool. And last but not least, we have a newcomer to the round table. So we've got, in tradition, you have to introduce yourself. First-time guests introduce themselves. So go for it. Who are you? And let everyone know who you are and what you do.
Thanks for having me on. I'm Tom Beckmann, the owner, co-owner, and brewer of Goldfinger Brewing Company out in Downers Grove, Illinois.
Nice. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
What do you guys do?
We brew beer.
Okay.
At least we try. We are a lager house. All we do is brew lager beer. Per the tradition, I guess, our interpretation of what the tradition is. Our roots actually go back to Eastern Europe and Poland and Czechia. My ancestor's last name was Goldfinger, and they used to run some breweries and deal hops around the region and make equipment for brewing. So we set out to kind of revive the old family tradition. We opened in July of 2020. So we're approaching our 2-year in a couple
Interesting
months.
time to open.
Yeah, we often get the question,
Why?
it's like,
We meant to do this.
Yeah, you see, we had a business plan that we were just sitting on for a long time, waiting for a pandemic to hit, and that was the right time to hit. So.
Buy low, right?
Exactly.
Have you done anything interesting with anyone interesting recently?
We have.
Yeah?
We've done some interesting things.
Sounds like a loaded question.
Yeah,
It's fully loaded.
I know. I wonder where this is going. Yeah, we're actually gearing up for our anniversary party, and
Oh, nice.
we typically like to release 2 new beers. And of course, being that it's lager beer, we already have to brew them for our first weekend in August anniversary party. So we did one, which was a big honor for me, with Bierstadt out in Denver. They came in last week. Well, Ashley Carter came in. And we brewed an Italian Pilsner because it was a style that neither of us were going to brew otherwise.
Cool. It's a good. I like when those sort of things happen during collabs. That's fun.
Yeah, it was a great collab.
And can I interrupt you and ask quickly what makes an Italian Pils different from just like a hoppy German Pils or an American Pils or something like that?
The funny thing is, the first time I had
Take a deep breath before you describe it is the main thing.
we're only steps away from the first time and the only time that I've actually had Tipo Pils.
Oh yeah,
Right here with Jude.
At Pistolino, the Italian market.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not an expert in Italian Pilsner.
Okay.
I can tell you that I've had a lot of interpretations of it around here. So I've formed some kind of opinion on it.
Oh, we got a lambic getting dropped off. Thanks, Sam.
And
If you want to come back and grab some. What's up, Tom? Sorry.
But we had Tipo Pils, and my interpretation of it is that it's a slightly more rustic Pilsner. I wouldn't say it's like extremely clean like a German Pils would be, a traditional German Pils. I think it's meant to be slightly rough around the edges, but in a good way. And I was impressed that it actually didn't have as much hop aroma as I was expecting based on local iterations of the style. So what we set out to do was kind of use the Tipo Pils as inspiration, but try to do something a little bit more uniquely our collective breweries. So we actually didn't use the hops that most people use to try to mimic that. We used
Citra, Simcoe, Mosaic.
No, Mosaic, Citra, Simcoe.
Right. My bad.
Yep. It's actually 100% Columbus. A little throwback.
Oh, so it's like a 1998 Simcoe.
Yeah. No, we put one of our favorite hops is Tettnanger.
Oh yeah.
It's what's in our normal pills, the Goldfinger pills. And we like to play around with Polish hops a lot. And we had a really nice floral Polish hop called Tomiski. So it's going to be dry hopped. I would say lighter than what I think other interpretations of the beer are around here. But it'll have a nice aroma, and I'm excited for it.
Cool.
Kind of a coincidence, but the panel you asked me about, Ashley was on that panel. So
Ah,
Nice.
very cool. Well, that's cool. So that sounds like a fun collabo that you guys have done. That's amazing. And Bierstadt, they've got quite the reputation. Man, the isolation on these mic stands is not the best. I mean, you can literally hear you quietly shifting a tray. That's insane.
Listen, that's just the sound of us about to have a good time, so don't worry about it, people.
I mean, this is me gently tapping my finger on the table.
Oh, yeah.
It's ridiculous. All right. We got
I
it.
guess Serge isn't as good as we thought he was.
Well, he's like, hey, is it a
Serge,
fade?
do you not control the sound of the
It's
entire
true.
world?
Can you fade out that part specifically? I just need. Anyway, why don't we? Well, thanks very much for coming on, and thanks to Serge, by the way, for setting it up. By the way, because Tom, I think Serge is who reached out to you originally.
Yes.
So, well done, Serge, for
True producer.
yeah, a true producer, exactly. I was trying to think of a fade pun, but I just couldn't. It was going to be
I've been hearing
even too tortured for me.
I've been hearing about this fade thing,
Yeah,
but to see it in person is
It's
Right?
stunning, right?
It really is.
yep.
You really can't grasp it until you watch
The
it.
first hour of the show is just watching him fade us in.
It's a whole fade show.
Yeah, that's the pre-show. Is the fade in, yeah, it's like the old timey like the harpsichords that had like 7 layers of keyboards and stuff. That's like him on the fader. He's just like his hands are a blur.
His feet are going.
Exactly.
It's unreal.
Yeah. Why don't we? We got a bunch of stuff to get into. You looked at me, had a glass just out, and then you just moved. I put my hand up, and then you moved it away. Well done. No, that
I had
was
a whole
good.
plan, and you got in the way with what you.
That was very good. I appreciate it. That was very funny. What are we drinking here, Tom? You brought this, didn't you?
I did. What are we drinking here? Which one is this? It's
Rose de
Cantillon.
Gambrinus. It's Rose de Gambrinus Cantillon. Thank you for bringing it. It's delicious.
We're killing this.
I literally have a whole bottom shelf in my fridge of different Cantillon that I brought back from brewing school. So it's quite old now. But nobody else in my family and none of my close friends that would come over likes this kind of stuff. So I'm excited to be able to open it with you guys because I know you'll appreciate it.
Yeah,
2017 it seems like 16, 17.
So I've only stolen
nice.
2 things in my entire life.
Okay.
When I was 8 years old, I stole a clip off of something that was at Bed Bath & Beyond that my mom told me I couldn't have because I wanted the clip to hook it on to my Tamagotchi pet
Got it.
and have it on my wrist.
Nice.
Adorable.
And, she said I couldn't have the thing that the clip was attached to, which was like probably way too expensive. So I just stole the clip part off of it and put it in my pocket and walked
Got it.
out. Clipped it to my Tamagotchi pet, have it on my wrist. I was like psyched, brought it downstairs. The next morning, she's like, "Did you steal that?" Because I had explained to her I want this clip part of it for my Tamagotchi pet. And I'm like, no, I just like put it in my pocket when we were leaving. And so she made me go back to the Bed Bath & Beyond and return it to the people at the Bed Bath & Beyond.
The clip.
The other thing I've stole was a 375 milliliter bottle of Rose de Gambrinus from a liquor store that I worked at that shall not be named. That's also not Benny's.
It's the beer temple.
Technically I've never worked here.
True.
I was working an event where I felt very underappreciated, and there was a case of these, and
Was it an
stole one.
annual event?
And, it was an annual event. Yes.
Oh, okay. I could see how one would feel unappreciated at that event.
And it was the first time I'd ever had lambic. I was like 22 or 23 years old, and I stole one of these because I wasn't allowed to drink the beers that were being served at the party.
Oh, that's so uncool.
It wasn't,
especially at that event.
It wasn't typical. I was a new employee, and for some reason, I wasn't allowed to do the same.
New rule we're implementing right now.
I had just started working there, and I was working a 11-hour shift and working the entire store by myself because everyone else was out hanging out. So I felt it was deserved that I were to try.
You didn't want to steal it. You felt it was owed to you.
Right. Exactly.
Got it.
Which is the best way to do things, right? But I brought it home and tasted it, and I was very confused and excited by what this was. So this is a very exciting thing to have again.
can we quickly go through some beers that we've had recently or that we're looking forward to having, and then we'll get into the topics?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Who wants to go? Who wants to go first here? I'll go first then. I had the Bauhaus Pils from Art History, German Pils, phenomenal. One of the best new to me Pilsners that I've had in recent memory. So
Yeah.
amazing. Very, very crisp, assertive hop character. I'd say very much in style, and a lot of Pilsners come around all the time, but it was one that definitely kind of got my attention. So
Sure.
I dug it.
I went out there, I did a dinner out there in Geneva. I was part of an anniversary dinner for Niche out there, and I got to go to Art History and have a bunch of their beers, and they were all very, very delicious.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you find it hard to describe a Pilsner that's like a 10 out of 10 versus like an 8 out of 10 to you? Because I feel like I don't know how to put that into words.
Yeah.
I just kind of know it.
Yeah, I guess it is kind of hard to put into words. I'm just trying to think about it now. I mean, the guy to ask is Tom. I'll go first because he'll then just correct me everywhere that I'm wrong. For me, my favorite Pilsners are all a balance of malt and bitterness. So it's like I want it to be very light, but still have the just a depth of malt. And then I also want it to have like this really bright herbal hop character to it, and a little bit of a crisp finish. Like my favorite pills always have some crispness to it. Yeah. Yeah. See also Trumer pills. But no, like that's which I think is a fair example of that. I mean, I do like other Pilsners, but that is one of my favorites. How about you, Tom? What's like a difference between an 8 out of 10 versus a 10 out of 10 pills? I don't know that much about Pilsner.
What's Pilsner? I actually think that a lot of it has to do with the environment. I look at Pilsner much like I look at IPA, in that it's a beer that would typically showcase more hop character. And if you were to ask me, like, what's a 10 out of 10 IPA, I don't know that I would be able to answer that. Or my answer might vary depending on when and how and where I drank it. I agree with the balance. I definitely like that. I think our Pils is designed with that in mind. This present bitterness, but that's complemented by a slight touch of malt sweetness.
Yep.
And not overly aromatic, just kind of classic German style Pils. I also had the Bauhaus here last week. Delicious.
Oh yeah, yeah, really nice.
Yeah.
I think yours has a little bit more malt character to it. I would say,
agree.
I think it's important to say, just like with IPAs, just because you have one 10 out of 10 doesn't mean that profile is the only one that works. There's, Too Hard, it can be a 10 out of 10, and then, something from the West Coast can be a 10 out of 10 as well, and they're very different. So it's but it's interesting with such a delicate style, like how to start like really dividing it up, which I think is what you're getting at, Doug.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people tend to follow the guidelines, the style guidelines, so Czech versus German, but German is such a broad category. Is it North German? Is it Bavarian? Is it Franconian? I think ours doesn't actually fall into one specific category. The inspiration for ours was from my visit to Tegernseer brewery in the Alps. It's just on this beautiful lake, the Tegernsee, a monastic brewery. And when I describe our pills to other people, it's really based on the memory I have of having had like 3 liters every day of Helles for like 5 weeks straight. And then having that Pilsner touch my lips for the first time, and there was hop character, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So that's what I based our recipe on, that memory. I bet I haven't had one of those since I was there, so it could be way off, but I'm going to stick to that memory.
No, that's amazing. That's what it's all about.
That's kind of what your style is then, right? Is your memory and your workaround for trying to recreate this thing you had in a specific moment. It doesn't have to be exactly the thing they made, right? It actually would probably be worse if it was you trying to make exactly that thing every time.
Who wants to go next? Beers that they've had lately that they've enjoyed.
We brewed a collaboration this weekend with a brewery called Funky Town. It's a black-owned brewery that is brewing a pilot project right now. They won like the Brewbound business plan competition this year, but we've known them for about a little over a year. They came and shadowed me and the Iswas crew to like see what a commercial brewery looks like, and I'm like, yeah, but when you guys do it, don't do this, because we do a lot of things that are very specific to making saison, and they're not specifically doing that. But they brought some of their beers, and we had the homebrew versions of them, and then getting to try the commercial versions was like pretty awesome to watch the evolution, and within a year of them like really kind of upping their game. And so I think it was called Hip Hops and R&B Brew was the beer. It's like their kind of flagship pale ale. And it went from really good homebrew the last time we had it about a year and a half ago to like a really delicious kind of Midwest style, like malty but hop forward pale ale. And it's killing it. And they're all over the Drools, and you have them here, and it's awesome to see people that are like, we have this idea, and then actually do it and become very successful at what they're doing. So
very fun.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Congrats to Funky Town.
Yeah.
Mine is less of a beer and more of a concept, but our taproom manager.
Honesty.
What are you, me?
Exactly.
I mean, it is a beer, but I rarely, I almost never try to do a Revolution beer for this, but our taproom manager, I believe, gets credit for this, decided to offer an option for our Mexican lager to be able to have it where they dip the rim of the glass in hot sauce and then put tahini on the edge.
Oh, cool.
And then fill it up. And I had never even seen that. I mean, I've of course seen micheladas, but I just never seen anyone do that before. I'm sure plenty have. But so I ordered one. I was like, I got to try this. And I always order different stuff, or I drink Fist City is kind of my go-to, and I just can't order anything else but that these days. And I just keep having these Mexican lagers with the hot sauce and tahini, and it is so good.
It's awesome. I mean, that's awesome.
I mean,
I like
ways to incorporate things that are flavor profiles aren't normally in beer are always very fun, right? Like spice, which is a difficult thing to put in a beer permanently, right? Because that's always going to be in there, and I don't know if I want to drink a bunch of those, but to have like the opportunity to sip a little bit of it and take a little taste, or savoriness or things like that, it's always like, that's a point of service thing that is very fun to add to something like a Mexican lager or any of those experiences.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Tom, you're up.
So we had the privilege to go to Philly over the weekend for a lager only fest.
Cool.
In this like
great.
restored.
Where at?
In Cherry Street Pier. It's like this old restored pier right on the Delaware. That inside is full of like artisanal market, like a bunch of shipping containers converted into art studios and stuff. And so I had a list of a bunch of lager brewers that I had been following but hadn't been able to try. And one that stood out to me was from a brewery called Fox Farm.
Oh, in Connecticut?
Yes, in Connecticut.
Yeah, they're close to where I grew up.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, they grew up, they opened quite a bit after I moved away from there, but yeah.
Yeah, they brought a smoked Helles, and
yeah, that beer rocks.
Oh man, I like smoked beer, but smoked Helles isn't my favorite. Man, it was just perfect because you didn't have too much of like the phenolic character that smoke would contribute. It was just perfectly balanced with like just great Pilsner malt character. They obviously dialed back the hops, compensating for the bitterness that the phenols would contribute. And oh my God, it was just like beautiful. The smoke dissipated after like one sip, and before I knew it, the glass was over, and I'm filling another one. It was perfect, and it was a really hot day too.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
It's perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a very fond memory of drinking that beer out of cans in the backyard of Spite and Dival. I was in New York for something we were doing for Pipeworks, and my friends told me to go to this event, and I'm like, I don't know what this is, but we were like just drinking cans of Fox Farm smoked lager in the back.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's like one of their beers, then, like one of their
I don't
main
know.
beers.
I think they make it somewhat regularly, but
That's cool.
Yeah, it was perfect for this like June or July day in Brooklyn. And
I love the idea of a U.S. contemporary brewery having a somewhat regular beer that is a smoked Helles. That's pretty awesome.
I'm not sure how much. I've only interacted with like once or twice, but when I've had it, it's been absolutely fantastic.
Right.
Earlier today, I was entertaining some people at the brewery for a half hour, and we have this little bar in the back of the brewery that's like the halfway point of our tour, where we have a one-barrel system back there. And anything that we're testing out, or if there's just a style our brewers want to make that isn't a big seller, but we want to make some, we put it on back there. And one of them was a Grodziskie. And when we were tasting them out through a few other styles, and these people knew nothing about what it was, and they just said, "Oh, what's a?" And they tried to say it. What's a Grodziskie? I was like, whew.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right. So I spent like 2 minutes trying to like prepare their brain senses for it, because that's a tough style to love on the first try. Like it's like so I was like kind of challenged myself. I was like, I'm going to try to get them to actually like this by preparing them as much as I can for what they're about to taste and why it tastes the way it does. And they loved it. And it was fun. It was a good example. I do this a lot with sours, especially like a barrel-aged sour for someone who at least likes wine, trying to connect it into there and open their mind to it before they taste it, and how much more likely someone is to enjoy it when you get them there mentally first.
So the beer that we just brewed with Funky Town, the prompt that we both worked off of and was make a beer that would pair very well with Creole food. So we made a Saison that's 30% purple rice, a malted purple rice from Sugar Creek. And then I had the dumb idea of being like, what if we put some smoked malt in there too? Like, just like a little bit, like just like a season it with smoked malt. And we got some cold smoked peach wood malt. So already been malted, and then it was cold smoked with that peach wood. And so originally I was gonna be like, we should be like maybe 1% of this grist bill should be smoked malt. And we get this malt, and because of its cold smoking, it's after it's been actually germinated and malted, and everything's happened to it. So it's just kind of on the outside of it too. It smells really smoky. Then you chew it up, and it's like not that smoky anymore. So that morning when they showed up, I was like, well, we were gonna do 2%, but let's like chew up like 3%, 5%. We ended up doing like almost 10% smoked malt. Because it's way less smoky than most smoked malt. And so the idea was that there would be this background element of like savory smoke on something that's going to be otherwise like really crisp, clean, and a little bit of like peach character for some cashmere hops we were using. And I tasted it out of the fermenter. It's like day 3 of fermentation, and the smoke is there in the background, and it's like doing exactly what it's supposed to do, and it like makes it even more drinkable. And then when you would describe to people like, there's actually a little bit of smoke malt, and they're like, oh, what?
Nice.
But adding that like depth, and like that's a element of beer that you can't get from most other character other than smoke, is something that I think people, when presented in a approachable way, really do like and desire and latch onto.
Fun fact about your Grods, we supplied the Lubelski hops for that. And one of your guys came out on, I want to say Thursday of last week, brought a crowler of it.
Oh, nice. So you've had it.
So, yeah, I've had it. It's delicious. So we actually busted out. We still had a couple cans left over from our Grodziskie that we did last year with live oak, and we had some live oak as well. And our staff is like geeking out about these beers. Last year, I remember we were packaging it, and one of our front of house staff who helps pack tech took the first sip. He's like, "Wait, we're really putting this in cans? Like, what is this thing?" And now it's his favorite beer. And when we had it on tap, everybody gets a couple shift beers. Everybody was going for liters of Grods at the end of the night. All our staff just loves that beer. So we had a farewell for one of our staff members and busted out your Crowler and all the other Grods and just had a smoked beer party.
Wow. I know at Live Oak, they're like the staff there is all about the Grodziskie. They love it. I've yet to have one that I have that response to, like you and your staff has, Tom. Not to say that it's a bad style or anything like that, but
Chris hates Grods.
Right. Exactly. Well,
put it on the record.
I have to say that
Make
because
canonical. Chris hates hazy IPA. Chris hates Grods.
When the taproom manager gets asked more than once, "Wait, you're allowed to have hazy IPAs on? I thought Chris hates them." I have to qualify things.
Yeah, I mean, you're an oppressive figure.
Exactly. All right. Well, why don't we take let's just a quick break, and we'll come back and start getting going with the topics on the Beer Temple podcast. Talk to you soon.
And we're back. If you're listening to the Beer Temple podcast, I'm here with my co-host Chris Quinn,
The Quiet Storm,
the Fade Master, Serge, Tom from Goldfinger, and Nostradouglas, the knower of all things. Chris, what are we going to be talking about for the next segment?
Well, Mike, we're halfway into the year 2022. If you remember at the beginning of the show, it took me a little while to realize it was 2022 and not 2020. But so at the beginning of the year, and what we've been doing pretty much every year towards the end of the year, or I'm going to slowly get out of the Quiet Storm voice and just go back to my normal.
No, you got to stay in the quiet storm.
I'll go back and forth like a storm, just kind of ebbing and flowing. So we do the year in review and the predictions for the future, and then we doubled down and we did the look into the future and answer the unanswerable. And that's how we...
probably had the best background music of any episode we've done.
Yeah, and that's how... Yeah, we definitely did.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Had the only background music of any show we've ever done.
And it was like creaky doors and stuff like that. And then bubbling cauldrons. Didn't we then immediately predict that Sweetwater would be acquired, or
no? I think before the episode came out, they were.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And it
probably wasn't Sweetwater.
My memory is
someone got bought between the time we recorded the episode. And
my memory isn't perfect, but I think we all simultaneously predicted that would happen.
And my number one prediction of cold kvike is still not happening. So get on it, people. Don't let me be alone.
So Nostradouglas,
yeah.
He wanted to have I don't know if he wanted to have a throwdown or what, but there was a few things. So we're kind of halfway through, and there was just I think a few topics that you thought might be interesting to see where we're at with things, right? Doug, I don't know if I'm saying this even remotely accurate to what your hope was, but why don't I throw it to you, and then you can tell us what you were hoping we could talk about.
Yeah. You know what? Me personally, I'm at the time of year where we want to, we like to make a few updates to our portfolio every year, and those new changes, new things to get excited about, things to get our distributors excited about, ways to evolve what we're doing. Those typically actually make it to store shelves right after the new year, sometime in January, February, something like that. So you got to be, especially when you got to make packaging and artwork and all that, you got to be working on that now. So we're really going through that, and I know tons of other breweries around the country, especially the ones that we all look up to at the top. It's always fun to see what the big guys are doing, and we're only sort of big, depending on who you compare us to. So, I think of those kinds of breweries, I think of two different types. There's the ones that, like, to use a NBA example, like there's ones that trust the process, that are kind of doing the slow evolution, trusting what they do, and they kind of go about things their own way. And then there's the kind of breweries that just kind of try to create the big three and basically kind of make the three most popular styles, and whatever seems to be hot, they just kind of go all in on it and do well. And there's nothing wrong with that, but they're very much like kind of like waiting and then pouncing in a way. And so I was thinking, like, what is the thing that's certainly already happening now? This wouldn't be news to anybody, but what's the thing that's maybe not quite at that level yet that everybody's about to pounce on?
The pouncers. What are the pouncers going to pounce on?
The year before COVID, it was the low-cal IPA. So like right after this time in 2019, late that summer, all of a sudden we got press releases that Bell's was going to have Lighthearted, and Firestone was going to have Flyjack, and everybody else at that level was doing a low-cal IPA. And now some of those maybe are still out there. Some are doing okay. Maybe some have already gotten killed. I think it's like a mixed bag. But like every year there's a couple of those things. And I think it's kind of fun to talk about what do we think some of those are for this coming year.
So let me just jump in and ask you, where is cold IPA in this cycle? Is it already in the lexicon of the breweries you're talking about, or is it yet
You should speak in astronomy terms. Is it in ascendance?
Yeah.
Or is
it
in
a rising?
retrograde?
Is it a rising sun or a setting sun or a rising moon? I don't know anything about astrology.
Cold IPA is in retrograde. I don't know if that's right either.
Is cold IPA ascending for these people, or is this something that they're already jumping on for the terms of what we're going to talk about?
So unlike the brewed IPA, where everybody, I think this might have just come up on this show, where everybody was like really mad that they missed on being early to hazy because there was doubters for many years. Then they eventually jumped in. When Brute came about, before anybody truly had a definition for it or what the heck it was, everybody's like, we got to make one right now. Mm-hmm. And they were everywhere, and then they were gone, partially because of that. It wasn't because they were necessarily bad or anything. Cold IPA, by this point, I think some people are very gun shy. Some people are stubborn about the naming convention. But I think a lot of people are like not wanting to ignore this, but they're going about it more carefully. Bell's, I remember they did Cold Hearted at Great Taste last year, and I thought it was just like a draft only kind of small thing they made on a pilot system. Then before I knew it, they were putting it in their IPA variety pack. It wasn't a 6-pack you could buy, but for a 12-pack where you got 4 of 3 different kinds of IPAs, they kind of slid it in there as like a little test. Like, see, how much do people really like this? Could this be year-round? Could this be a seasonal as more than just a slide into a variety pack? Sierra Nevada is doing the same thing now. They made Cold Torpedo. So cold IPA is getting buy-in. So I think it has to be considered still very much on the ascent if we're just getting the biggest of the breweries just starting to put it into a variety pack to see how it does. Now, I'm not saying it's going to reach that level where it's going to be a top 5 6-pack for a Sierra or a Bell's, but I think some are going to try. So I think it's going to be a lot wider before it gets smaller.
What metrics do you think breweries are looking at when they sneak these things into multi-packs to assess whether or not they should turn them into their own
unsophisticated social media monitoring,
like Untapped style, like how's it doing or how's the pickup?
Maybe like following, what the Caper Knots are writing for, like the beer and what's the magazine, the
beer and some other stuff.
Yeah, sorry.
Craft beer and brew.
Craft beer and brew. Yeah. Thank you.
Beer.
Sure, it's a lot of great pieces on like trending. I think there's a lot of trends get elevated or kind of gain a voice in publications like that, and many others as well.
But it is just observation of,
I believe so.
No, quote unquote noise.
Let me ask a question for everyone. What do you guys think? The big guys, when the big guys get into something, how much demand for style do you think is driven when the big guys get involved? Like when Hazy might be a bad idea, a bad example, because Sierra was pretty quick on hazy, but like for a cold IPA, when it gets around to in the general cycle of how things usually go, when the big guys start doing it, is that pushing more demand for it, or is that really showing that okay, time to think of something different? The big guys are onto it now.
I think they're creating awareness for it, because I think only a tiny fraction of people have even heard of the term. Now, a little more so than maybe 6 months ago, because I just going to breweries in Minneapolis, more places I went to had one on draft than didn't. So I mean,
cold IPA.
Yeah. So and called and
is crazy to me.
So
more had it on than didn't.
Yes. Wow. The first place I went to had one. It was the first thing I ordered. It was really good.
Wow.
Yeah. If you can put away, or if you just don't have the preconceived notions of like hating the name, they're often likable.
Yeah. No, I don't feel one way or another about the style. If there's anything I don't like about it, it's that when everyone jumps to do a style all at once, it's so unfair to the style. The style didn't do anything to me, but it does make me like, what the hell, man?
But this one I like because so many people are against it, and that's why I've gravitated.
Are people against it?
Oh my goodness!
Well, I mean, I know one person
where are people against it? Because like usually I'm against these things, and this one I'm like, this is kind of cool. I'm into this.
I'm against it.
Cold.
Yeah. People are against cold.
Cool.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, cold IPA. I mean, does it have the best name in the world? You were going to say something.
I'm against it only for the Goldfinger brand. So the
Goldfinger is
the funny thing about Goldfinger is
over here.
The first collab we did with Hop Butcher back in December of 2020 was what you would call a cold IPA, and they really wanted to call it a cold IPA.
Yeah.
But it was also our first collab we had ever done. It was going to be the first beer we ever canned. And we're a lager-only brewery. And it was made just like how we make our lagers, except Hop Butcher contributed their IPA prowess to it. And so I insisted that we not call it that. And we just ended up calling it a hoppy lager. Because for our brand...
That's my favorite way to... I mean, personally, hoppy lager. Perfect. I like it.
Yeah, I remember a conversation we had with our friend Hot Take Jake.
The third eye.
The three-eyed, yeah. The third-eyed Jake. On this very podcast where I was like, well, this term means this and this term means this. And so, Doug, what do you think hoppy lager is not giving to people that cold IPA is that they're attaching to? What is the...
We're getting a little off topic.
Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack the conversation. We can go right back into after this, but like...
Sure.
Why do you think this has attached to people's brains in a way that IPL or hoppy lager or any other version of trying to say this is an IPA fused with a lager hasn't quite hit people?
Well, I mean, I think it's branching to something they know better, which is IPA. So it's like connecting into it. I think cold IPAs tend to use very modern, American hops typically, and I think they taste at least half, if not 3/4, like an IPA, with just something a little extra that makes them easier to put down and a little less heavy. And so by using the term that, again, I believe is at least half, if not 3/4 the way what they actually taste like, which is an IPA, I think you better prepare them for something that they might actually like, whereas if you put hoppy lager on it, they're much more likely to not try it.
Right. I think that a post-show conversation I had with Jake was that these are a base and modifier terms, right? Where there's a base term being IPA or lager, and there's a modifying term being hoppy or cold. And so the expectation is set by the base term and then modified in some direction by the modifier. So cold IPA.
So is hoppy lager. It does the exact
right,
same thing.
but it modifies with lager, where you think something, and then when you if it's a hoppy lager and it has Citra in it, that throws you off. Lager, to me, if I'm going drinking this, lager should have continental hops in it, right? And then if it's a hoppy lager that has Citra in it, it's something that I didn't expect, and it better delight me. Whereas if it's IPA, you're like, oh, I know what that is. And if it's like cleaner, and that cold defines cleaner, that makes sense to me. I'm using my hands a lot for the people who can't see on the podcast.
So the interesting debate, and there's a lot of different ways to call it, and we brewed with Hopewell a Lupo lager. I think it's going to be their second Lupo.
Supo lager.
Supo. Yeah. Supos. And it's going to be delicious.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we're going for anyway? Just delicious.
Yeah.
Delicious.
That's what you are. You're going for
absolutely
delicious hoppy beer with a clean kind of crisp finish.
Totally. And I'm someone who hates style. I hate the concept of it. But what it is a useful tool for setting up expectations for this person who's about to drink the liquid we put in a can.
Getting more people to buy into a certain style, or maybe it's just a brand, like the brewery brand that's selling that, as opposed to the actual style. So have you established?
Well, that's something. It's funny. We had talked about it. You weren't in on the conversation. We were texting back and forth. And one of the things that I said I was interested in talking about outside of this, and Doug was like, I think it might tie into this conversation, was, when do you pounce? The people who pounce, like I had a not as nice word for it, but I said kind of chase, but like the pouncers, and when do you go, like you said, slow and steady, and just kind of do kind of your own thing? And I think there might be, different answers to, there might be different answers to, or they might both be right in certain situations. Oh yeah. See, I sound better without the thing.
You sound way better with a pop screen.
Wow, but then I have to be careful. Anyway.
I think you can pop some plosives and you'll be all right.
Yeah. Okay, fine. It is funny how that little screen.
You have a much more Velvet Fog voice going on
true.
right now.
Okay. Anyway, is it important to put the style name on everything that you're doing? I mean, I think you can call something a hoppy lager, but I feel like sometimes the style trumps is like what you want to put out there first. Like, we're making a cold IPA, or we're making this beer. It's it's a lager we're making. We're dry hopping it. It's it's a little hoppier than normal. Where it, like you were saying, it's kind of setting things differently. Like, we're making a hazy IPA, and that's why we're going to call it. It's going to have a hazy pun on it, just so everybody knows that it's a hazy IPA. And I guess a little bit of that is, I guess there's like base styles that everyone's going to have. Everyone's going to have an IPA. Everyone's going to have a, I don't know after that. Everyone's going to, have something hoppy.
Everyone's going to have a Saison.
Right. Everyone's going to have a Saison.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if that kind of seeing what's hot and then kind of going after what's ascending is and calling it out as what it is. Because it was the same thing with like session IPA. It was the same thing with locale IPA. Everybody was just like pumping out there like, this is our session IPA, this is our this is our that. And I don't know. That stuff just it does not inspire me.
It's soulless.
Yes.
Same.
Yeah.
Different way of saying the same thing.
Yeah. You have the better way of saying it, as usual. So, but I don't know if I had. Oh, here's the other part, and we can get back to it. Are you going to be calling that beer Cold Finger, as Chris mentioned? And if so,
follow-up question: may I demand it's called Cold Finger?
And a follow-up question.
But it's still a Lupo lager.
I think that there's a lot of potential here, much like Flying Dog named everything kind of like a doggy name.
Yeah, let's not use them as an example for anything that should be done.
I think there's a lot of potential with Goldfinger.
Everything is cold.
Goldfinger.
Yeah. When you guys turn into a hazy IPA brewery, you can call everything cold.
Yes.
Cold.
I want to do it. I will immediately ask to do a collab, and I don't care what style it is. It just has to be called "Smell My Finger."
Okay, clip that out, Serge. I do want to point out, just quickly before you answer that question, there's a post on Reddit from 2.5 years ago saying, when does Iswas turn into just a hazy IPA brewery? Not yet.
Nice.
Clip that out.
We're holding out.
Yeah, we're holding out. Anyway.
I think Justin from Hop Butcher proposed Cold Finger as the name of what eventually became Unhopfen.
Yeah.
That was one of the first suggestions. I was like,
Cold Finger.
Cold Finger.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
Is there room for that style to be defined by the hops? So like
For cold IPA?
or Lupo
which style
Lager,
are we
or
talking
however
about?
you want to call it.
Define how.
Lupo
Define
Lager is
how.
a different thing, right?
Like people at this point are fairly familiar with different hops, right? So if you're making a hoppy lager that is going to showcase Citra, let's say, as the main one,
Never heard of it.
how would you interpret on a menu a Citra lager? Would you think it's going to be a non-bitter lager, or would you conclude, oh, Citra lager, that means that probably going to be pretty aromatic, pretty hoppy? I mean, they're putting the hop name in the name of it.
Right.
I think it's a very good point. I think you can only do that with a certain number of hops, all of which are going to be American. I mean, I think it begins and ends maybe with Citra. What other hop could you do that with, where someone's going to be like
Mosaic.
Maybe Mosaic.
Simcoe.
Strata. People like Strata now, right?
But Strata, you were getting
Strata's a
into
tier
like
down. Can you do the Columbus lager? I don't know. And would this mean that it's like, what would it mean if you're saying it's this hop lager? Like, I guess we're getting really in the weeds on this one.
I don't know.
But
Why
let's
is
finish,
hoppy?
like,
Why is cold IPA?
Oh,
wait, I answered the question. Why is cold in my own head? Why is cold IPA better than hoppy lager? Is what I was going to say, and then obviously because one has the word IPA in it.
Right. I remember.
So that's what it's all about. So if that's what it comes down to get people to try it, you put IPA in the name, even though it's stupid. Just like black IPA.
But it's
black
important.
IPA is the same thing.
Right.
It's important to note that the letters IPA have transcended what they stand for.
Yeah.
Right. KFC.
Hazy IPAs aren't pale, but nobody's ever really made a big stink about that.
Right.
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 I mean, it's the three letters have become a hoppy beverage in a way, and it technically no, according to the yeast, but
and black
yes,
IPA when
in
people
practice.
had like
That's true.
a tiny little like resurgence about a year ago.
No one was saying this
was.
isn't pale.
Right. And they did years ago, but that's
This isn't. Yeah, but
And
who cares?
cream ales often use a lager yeast. Nobody's has a problem with that.
Right.
Nobody probably knows,
Right.
but that's true.
But
but it's like that. Nobody ever made us think about
I
that.
think that this goes back to, as commercial breweries, the only reason you apply style to things. This isn't the only reason, but a good chunk of the reason you apply style to things on a label is to set up expectation, and then to deliver or delightfully subvert that expectation for people.
I just wrote a blog post, my second of the year, and we're not even halfway through the year, on West Coast IPA and how the term has lost all meaning. And
well, that was going to be what's going to be the next big thing.
Have
by
we
the
seen
way.
hazy West
go
Coast
on,
IPA?
go on.
okay, I am 100% confident you've not read
Yeah.
the blog post.
Yes.
But it.
I'm gonna pull it up.
Long story short, it was I created a Venn diagram. I assumed, not living on the West Coast, that I was just going to get crapped on for this. But I have all these West Coast blogs asking if they can share it. Everybody's like, yeah, that's a pretty simple way to lay it out. And it's pretty much that if you just break it down to, there was classic West Coast IPA that was, you name it, from Pizza Port all the way up to Ballast Point, Lagunitas, all those. Sure, they have their own nuances. Yes, there's difference between San Diego and Pacific Northwest, but let's just call all of those that were made before 2012 classic West Coast IPAs. We know generally what those roughly are. Then there was I used as my example, there's other breweries, a brewery like Cellar Maker. They started making these IPAs that were often clear, maybe a little bit of haze like a wit would have, but not looking like a New England one. they would use neutral Chico yeast, and they would just hop it like nobody was hopping an IPA before. And they were delicious. They're kind of what you might, I kind of cringe at the term, but it's fine. They're like a juicy IPA. Anyway, those are being made like crazy now.
Yes.
But people call those West Coast IPAs.
Yes.
And then Firestone Walker is coming out with this new revelation. And I did a better job in the blog post of like laying the timeline of this out, where we had COVID, where it was like, okay, we kind of missed classic West Coast IPAs, but those stopped innovating. Like as soon as Hazy came out, we stopped playing around with West Coast IPA. They just kind of stayed stagnant. They still sold like crazy. Lagunitas IPA, Sculpin, all those still sold. They were still the number one priority for a lot of the biggest brands. But nobody was trying to do anything new in that space.
The R&D.
Yeah. So that halted. So now it's like those styles are coming back, but now we have a whole new repertoire of hops that have these new flavors like Mosaic Citronelsa that came up in the cellar maker days of 2013 to 2016 when they were like brand new.
And the goalpost has moved as well.
And so there's this new kind of like modern classic West Coast IPA that's not quite as aggressive and bitter, but is still bitter, but has this whole new fruit forward profile to it. And this is like Firestone Hypnosis is my best example of this, one of the best ones I've tasted. Beer. And to me, that's like this third category. Now, could you make 10 categories out of these? Sure. But I thought that was the easiest way to explain the evolution. But anyway, point is, everybody is calling every one of those West Coast IPAs.
Right.
And those are all very good, enjoyable beers, but they're all very different. If I pick up a 4-pack for the first time, I'd like to know which of those 3 I'm getting.
Yep.
So I was basically saying, as much as I hate the invention of style names, I could use a moniker that would go before West Coast IPA. If we want to go with classic, juicy, or cellar maker called theirs unfiltered West Coast IPA, whatever you want to call it, I don't even care. But if we could agree on something, and then if we want to call Hypnosis like a modern West Coast IPA or something like that, I'd love that.
But those things don't come from like a symposium of everyone being like, "What's the best thing we call this?"
Correct. It
comes from who wins, right? Who has like sold the most of this, or like what are we like? That hits my brain in the right way.
I do think the market decides in that way. Like someone will come up with a way to differentiate.
Right.
Because I've been, because I mean, just as kind of being ahead of most normal beer drinkers on this thing, like that's something I come across just like Doug comes across. Like when you're ordering it, a brewery that you've never had and it says West Coast IPA, what are you hoping to get out of it, and why? What itch are you hoping that beer scratches? Because if you were looking for a nice, like really fruity beer that has a little bit of bitterness to it and it delivers on it, that's huge. If you're looking for something that is bone dry and aggressive, it's not going to deliver on it, and you're going to be disappointed, not because the beer's bad, but because, you know, if you ordered a Kolsch and you got a pale ale, you're not going to be happy.
Right.
You know?
And there is like that big of a difference in some of these styles.
Yeah,
beers, right?
Totally.
Like within the same, like even sub style.
Right. But I think the next big thing is going to the next thing for IPA is definitely, if it's not already here, is West Coast. I mean, it's coming up all the time. West Coast IPA, West Coast IPA, West Coast IPA.
What do you think that it's coming up all the time? That means that people here are asking for it, or it means that you want to drink it? In what way are you interacting with
people
that all the time?
People are asking for not hazy. What is being presented is West Coast. Is the one way I think people are showing
and which of these 3 West Coasts do you think people are most connecting with?
Can we define I know 2 of them. I'm not sure I know what the third is.
Classic, modern, and let's go with juicy.
Okay.
You've said that word way more times than
I
you
think
feel
modern.
comfortable saying.
How about unfiltered?
May I
I
ask
think
one more
modern
question
and
of
juicy.
Doug?
I think old school's pretty old school if you go back and drink them now.
Yeah, old school is aggressive.
They're awesome if you get a great one, but they also fade quick and become weird tasting really fast. And
Doug, in these 3 categories, do you think Headhunter and Main Lunch and Two Hearted fit into them at all? Would they fall into any of these categories, or are they separate things?
I set them up as Venn diagrams because there's some that are just like pure classic, and then classic overlaps with modern, and then so you could just you'd put it somewhere in the bubble by how far it's leaning. So Headhunter would be a classic, but it would have some of the shared circle with modern. But it would not be anywhere near juicy. There would be no overlap with the juicy. So
and
the modern
lunch
overlaps
is
with
modern.
The juicy.
It's like one of the first moderns, I would say.
And so
No?
you're saying,
I'd just say it's classic leaning modern.
and so
Because to me, it's nothing like Hypnosis. Hypnosis to me is like the modern mosaic hopped. Like Main Lunch is using hops that were pre 2012, right?
and Main Lunch falls where? That's where
Classic.
Classic. And where's Two Hearted fall on the spectrum?
Everything in classic, I'm trying to simplify this to 3. So
Yeah,
we're not gonna love where some go, and that's why it's like a spectrum.
But it's, I'm
So
just
Swami
thinking,
is like pretty far left. Mongo is pretty far, as far classic as you get. But then as you get to Lunch and you get to Headhunter and a lot of like Three Floyds ones, those are still classic but leaning modern. They were like ahead of their time classics to me.
where do you sit
Where's
personally?
Antihero?
Classic. Right in the middle, I'd say.
Where do you sit personally? Where do you want to grade?
I love what Firestone did with Hypnosis. This like modern version of the classics. I love new school hops. I love bitterness. I don't need to impress anybody with the bitterness, but I like some a good bit of bitterness. So, which would be to me like in the low to mid to high 60s in terms of like IBUs.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right to me.
How directly does the sorry, I just ask one more question. How directly does this Venn diagram line up with IBUs? Is the juicy thing all the way at the low end? Is it mostly an IBU contextualizes the nature of these beers, or is it just kind of
I think you could
roughly independent?
I think you could like going left to right, you could have IBUs going from 100 on down to the 20s if you're talking about pale ales. And the same spectrum would follow like Cascade all the way down to Nelson or something like that. And so like the IBUs follow as the hops evolve. Maybe not perfect 1-to-1, but
So
as you get more
roughly
modern
older
and
school
juicy.
or deeper into the
Classics.
IBUs.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's going across style. I think all
Things
styles
used to
are
be more
becoming
bitter.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like we have that Abyss on still. It's been on for a while. I mean, that is a bitter imperial stout.
Yeah.
I mean, and the Obsidian, their 6% stout, is bitter. Bitter beer.
I think one trend of American craft beer that has kind of gone the opposite way. I think is lager. Like earlier American craft versions of lager, maybe save Prima pills, were almost devoid of hops. And I think that the bitter American style of a craft lager has been ascendant in the last 8 to 10 years.
I think you got to thank Pivo for that. I mean, Pivo's the one that I think everyone had and was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. I want this. I want to make this. I love this beer. I mean,
I think it launched 1,000 Italian pilsners.
I mean, I know that's when I drink a Pivo, I do not think Italian Pilsner. I think American
I think
Pilsner.
Pivo.
I do too.
I just think Pivo.
I think American
Pivo was
Pilsner.
inspired by that, though.
No,
For
it
sure.
definitely was. It definitely
But-
was. But I don't think it tastes especially like an Italian Pilsner. I think it tastes like these American Pilsners that are huge now. These hop forward, but maybe continental hops, or if they're not continental in their profile, if not literally continental.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know how we got quite. I don't know. I've
yeah,
lost
anyway,
track.
we
of
just
where,
followed a thread of a conversation.
Well, I would piggyback off of what you said. I think my prediction for at least within lagers is not necessarily hop driven, but either process driven, adding a little more value to how this beer was produced, given that it's typically more about subtlety. At least what we've found as consumers are starting to get a little bit more interested in why they should value this and pay a little bit more money for this lager versus having just some macro lager.
Can you
And
give me an example of what a process would be, like a process-driven.
Well, just today, before I came here, we did our 4th edition of a cask tapping of a young version of our beer. And we started doing this with the motivation of giving people a preview of how lager evolves over time and the value of an extended lagering. So we risked giving versions of our beer that might not be that great or might be a little harsh, rough around the edges. And every subsequent one that we've done has been busier. More people have shown up from not just our local community. And we just today sold our beer, sold out of the keg, or the cask, the fastest today. And what we end up doing is we talk about the beer. So I will tap it, or my assistant brewer, my wife tapped it 2 months ago, and we'll stand there and talk about the sensory experience and what evolves and why we do it that way.
It's great to hear. That's awesome. I love to hear that. I also just have to ask, of the excitement, how much of that do you think is the fact that Just Milds is blowing up the cask as a format?
Well, I was trying to sneak one
like
in.
90%, 95%, 99%.
I'd probably say 95.
Okay. That's so like a conservative. You're being conservative. I get it. Okay.
Yeah. This is something I think Doug and I texted about a while ago, and talking about why are people being drawn to lagers, and how are lager breweries telling their story. And that so much of American craft brewery story has been about ingredients, right? So much about, these are the hops we're using, and this is the malt we're using, and this is what we're doing, and then we just do it, and then we do a good job of it, but it's mostly you're drinking these things. And that what's different about lager breweries, and what I think is beautiful, and I think that you guys and like Dovetail and breweries like that are doing a great job of, is like, well, what we do special is we take those ingredients and we use them in specific ways, and we add value to those ingredients. And so much more about the lager brewery story is about process, and putting that the brewing equipment up front, or taking pictures of like what you're doing, and presenting to people what we do with the things we have,
or explaining to them
than just what we have is better than other people's, because everyone can get the same Citra now. Or not, that's not true, but like, yeah, everyone's heard about Citra. So,
but think about how teaching and appreciating, how people are able to more appreciate based on what is being taught at Goldfinger, because it's like, lager. What is a lager? What does lagering do? Right. Well, why don't you taste it before it's fully lagered? So now it's like really the only way you can understand. Yes. And it's amazing. And even though it is, immature, and you would think it would be like a less expensive, which I don't think it should be. I mean, it's a special, it's access to this product that is at a state you don't normally. It's access to try something like that, which is really cool.
I think that's a great point, and I want to build on it with something I've always credited Tom for starting in Chicago, which is creating the regionality, importance and intrigue with beer customers. And I don't know if this is exactly the first one, but like when you did the Polish Pils the first time, I think a lot of people were like, oh, what is that? And then all of a sudden, you now have a New Zealand, is that a Pilsner or something?
Lager.
It's a Lupo
anyway,
lager.
Lupo lager.
I was like,
it is. Don't.
I can't steal it from Hopewell. I didn't put that on there.
I got a couple. Someone from Phase 3 who used to work at Rev gave me a couple of their Pilsners, and each one was like, I think there was a Czech Pilsner and a German Pilsner, and I just went on Untapped and typed Phase 3 Pilsner. And sure enough, like just in the last year, they had done, and the label looks the same, but a different color, but same like theme, like it's part of a brand family. And it was like, there was an American one, a German one, a Czech one, an Italian one, and a Polish one. And there were 5, and it was like a set. And it was like, is this the new Citra Ninja, Mosaic Ninja, Amarillo Ninja, but to get people into lagers, to be able to, and it's like you're adding, there's a nice smart marketing element to it, but there's a much more important educational element. It's a way to, do some different stuff and get people excited and add a little bit of the Pokemonification to lager that so many people love and the collecting
fine line.
side.
I think there's a fine line because I think when you start, and I don't want to use, Eric's my boy. Eric's, my brother, some would say.
A little dusty.
Yeah. But I just worry. I don't worry. I'm not sure if
Apprehensive of
Old man Chris, like
Old
creating
man Chris.
5 different. So what were the 5 styles again? Did you say
American, German, Czech, Italian, Polish.
Okay. I mean, unless you are nailing those styles, are you like? I don't know. I mean, it seems a little bit like Citra Mosaic, Simcoe, Citra Mosaic to me a little bit. If
what's bad about that?
Nothing's bad.
You're presenting as if like something is like.
Well, are you really educating?
By,
are you really educating somebody on what a Polish Pilsner is?
Yeah, and so
I think I understand the apprehension. I think a lot of it has to do with like, are you just putting a hop from Poland into a beer and calling it the Polish thing?
Yeah.
Kind of like what we did with the New Zealand. We just put a New Zealand hop in there with, there was more behind it, but we called it a New
Zealand lager.
New Zealand
tradition
lager.
That Chris will get mad at.
Yeah.
So.
No, I saw it, and honestly, I thought it was, and it's so
complete
funny.
Bullshit.
No.
And you're
the
going
funny
to
thing
kick Tom
was,
off the show
I
right
think
now.
Tom handed it to me. I kind of I smiled when I looked at it because I thought it was funny. I don't, not funny in but it was just I expected it to taste a certain way, and it delivered exactly.
Well, that's
good.
20 minutes ago we said that's.
I was
the
like,
point
oh,
of style,
there's
right?
Motoeco or Galaxy or something is not or
Waiti.
Yeah, one of those New
Are
Zealand.
you afraid that this regionality is just going to be a different way of defining the hops that are put into a thing, that everyone's just brewing the same German lager with like a different hop in it? Because that could be a dumbing down of lager, I suppose. Like,
No.
I'm not sure what you're.
No, I'm not worried. I'm not, I guess, apprehensive. I guess I'm not just I don't know. I'm not in love.
You don't find it appealing.
I'm not in love with that, with having we do. I don't know. I guess maybe I have to be able to think about it so I can put it into words a little bit better.
Sure.
But it's, to me, 5 different light lagers is a lot. And I guess to me, it seems like it's a little bit of new. So they can say, well, I've had their Italian Pilsners. Yeah, but have you had their Polish Pilsner? Because that, I think it's a little bit quite obviously
right.
that.
And if it's done just in a way to do, this is the same thing, but with a new name and a new hop, that's definitely not good.
Yeah.
But,
so what do you
that's not the
think?
case.
So along the lines of that, well, for us, Polish Pils is very significant, just given our history and our connection to Poland. And we really want to create more awareness behind Polish hops because they're excellent. They're fairly cheap. So we do a Polish Pils, but we also do a whole bunch of other beers that we have Polish hops in. Our Baltic Porter has Polish hops in it. Our Black Pils we did last winter, we did a light dry hop with a Polish hop. But in our effort to bring more awareness to just Poland as also a decent beer drinking country, we are planning to do Pilsners that are defined by the Polish hop. So what do you think about that?
I love it.
Like Tomiski,
Go for it.
Tomiski Pils or Marinka Pils or something like that.
I love it. I love that. I mean, I think you should everyone should go and do all of this stuff. And I do think it's really cool to kind of go deep into something. My question is, and this is a genuine question because I don't really understand Polish Pilsner as a style. So is Polish Pilsner, do you think, a distinct category from Czech, North German, Franconian, and Bavarian Pilsner? Do you think like, oh no, Polish Pils is definitely separate from all of those? Because even amongst those, I mean, you're in the German ones, you're splitting hairs. I mean, North German is drier and hoppier, and then like Franconian and Bavarian, like I don't think I could pick those out blind. I wouldn't know,
show's
man.
A farce,
right? And then you throw Poland in there. I wouldn't. I don't think you could even give me 2 examples of a Polish Pils and then say, do you taste how those are distinct styles? I just don't know if I could do it, and maybe it's because I'm just ignorant to the differences. So that's kind of what I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't think that. I think you are splitting hairs. I think that most Polish. Actually, there are not a lot of Polish Pilsners. There are a lot of Polish lagers.
Right.
Many of them are kind of a cross between Bohemian and German. So you still have some of that German bitterness, but you also have like a floor malted, kind of deeper malt character in a Polish lager. Polish Pilsner is probably just a iteration of a German Pilsner using Polish ingredients.
Is the ABV higher on them or anything like that? Because like I remember back in the day, you would get these lagers from Eastern Europe,
like Lithuania, like Crazy Bastard, which was like a 14%,
right? Or like those crazy like Russian ones,
10%
or like Estonian ones, and they're like they'd always be really strong. Like, but maybe that's just because that's the stuff that came here.
No,
so that's kind of like
actually there's deeper history with that, and that's just given the political climate in that area and the scarcity of food, and so much like monks would make Bach beer to tide them over while they're fasting. Like when you were going to make a beer in Eastern Europe, you were going to make a big ass beer that was going to make you feel nice and warm in those frigid winters where you might not have another meal coming for you. So there's a tradition there.
Like that to me sounds like room for a distinct style.
I agree.
Like that would be cool.
But that wasn't all they ever brewed, right?
No, I'm asking.
There are like light Polish lagers.
Yeah, right.
Right. And so I think that like the Polish Pils is probably a Polish American iteration on this, like, or an admiration of kind of the homeland, right? Of that, where I can use Kazbek, I can use Lubeski or whatever these other hops are, and create something that is what I imagined a daily drinking beer would be from Poland. And I'm not saying everyone making a Polish Pilsner is doing that. Most people making a Polish Pilsner is probably not doing that. They're just kind of making a understandable version of a light lager for their consumer with Polish hops. But there's certainly like Ryan, who used to brew with us, is the most proud Polish person I've ever met in my entire life.
For sure.
And so he would love it if we would have done that. We didn't do it because we didn't. But
that brings up a really good point, especially in our city. Such a big Polish population.
The biggest outside of Poland, correct?
Yeah. In fact, when I went to Warsaw as a kid, there were more Poles in Chicago than there were in Warsaw at the time. That might be an avenue to get more people interested in craft beer, as if you're marketing directly to that population who otherwise would be ignored in the beer world.
Right.
Yeah. No, I love it for all those reasons. I guess maybe I was thinking more, is this really an avenue for education? Because to me, it just muddies the. I mean, when I drink a Polish Pilsner, I have not yet found a distinct characteristic that I say, that's so if I tasted one, I will never ever say drink a beer that I've never had and be like, oh, that reminds me of a Polish Pilsner, because I don't know what a Polish Pilsner is. I could say that about Czech, Italian, German, even North German, but outside of that, I couldn't really go further.
Well, I think we're at like one of the laziest inflection points in craft beer where Pilsner means crisp, right? Pilsner means lager, right? Pilsner doesn't mean of Pilsen anymore. So it's a way of telling people this is a kind of like that clean thing you had, but also like, good.
It's like IPA, but it's the other pale thing. That's really popular.
Yes, I don't want to say the IPA of lager, but I think that's what Pilsner is becoming, if it hasn't already become that for American craft beer.
Is it okay if we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, we'll be right back. See ya. Welcome back to the Beer Temple Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Strange Mike, PhD, as well as Nostradouglas and Tom. He doesn't have a...
I need a name.
Yeah, he doesn't have it yet.
Yeah, what's your hocus pocus name?
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right.
Okay. We were having a very interesting discussion on Mexican lagers that we'll have to retell at another time.
The Patreon episode.
Exactly. But I think there was another topic that Doug had suggested, which was kind of checking in midway in the year and just talking about like where the state of affairs, right? So,
yeah.
Is there...
How's it
No,
going?
how's
it going?
You tell
what's
me.
Working,
I'm not saying
working.
it right. I can already
No,
tell.
I was. I wanted to go through some of the things that we're about to see more of. That we already see these, but where are we about to see
that's kind
breweries
of where I was going.
go all in? We kind of started going down that path.
So cold IPA, huh?
So, some things that are on my mind, like in the IPA sector, which is a fair place to lead off. I at least think compared to most years, there's some choices. We talked about cold IPA. We don't need to spend another minute on it. Chris, you brought up West Coast IPA, which is very, very much a thing. But in terms of like breweries, like finding out their next, making a move for next year of like what their next iteration of West Coast IPA is, I could see that being a thing. But a one that I'm on the lookout for, especially from the major breweries, is I think we're going to see more triple IPAs than we ever thought the world needed. And I think it's going to be because, we the number one selling craft beer in the country wildly is that Imperial Voodoo Ranger. We know it's partially because it's very cheap. It's a very good value ABV, getting you liquored up for your dollar. But, Sierra did it. They made like a big little thing. It's selling really well. When the data shows that a style is selling well, like it or not, ain't for me, but more are going to come in. So I'm not saying there's going to be a triple hearted or a triple, from any particular brewery, but I think we're going to see a lot of breweries at that size, unable to ignore that triple IPA. Maybe it's like gamers they're going after.
I've been
It's
seeing
a
it on
young
social.
crowd.
I've been seeing it on social.
Is this a thing we're marketing on Twitch, like an area that I just don't understand? I know it's a phenomenon. I know
Gamers
it's huge.
and
It's just not something But triple IPAs are a monstrous segment that I cannot quite wrap my head around, but I know is a thing.
I could see 19.2 selling very well at Olvie. I had one beer on the way home. You had a 12%, 19.2 ounces of 12% IPA.
So do you think that's going to trickle down to the even Rev size breweries, or do you think this is just going to be
I think it's a decision. I think it goes on a whiteboard at Rev, and then it's up to Rev to say, is this something we're excited about? Do we want to do this? Does this fit? Or is this one to say, maybe this would sell, maybe it wasn't, this is just not for us?
And is it a budget conscious? Is budget to the style, or are you just saying we're just going to start seeing big alcohol IPAs, or is it going to be like good value, like Golden Monkey style things where it's like not an IPA, but
Yeah, no,
Well, you know what I'm talking about?
100%. Yes.
I think a gold monkey is like near impossible to create today.
Yeah.
It's what it is today because of what a head start it had,
Right.
and getting started when it did. And
I think more the place it plays in
something
people's
for
buying
which
choice. Yeah.
Alcohol being high, being like, yes.
But like if you attach it to a known commodity, that's why I used like Three Hearted as a made up example. That wouldn't shock me either, especially with them being owned by the same
Sure.
company that makes the best selling
Right.
triple
A
IPA.
light prediction that he can come back on and be like, I nailed it.
Yeah. So, yeah. But at least there's three choices in the IPA realm, whereas in the past it seemed like you either did this one new thing or you didn't. And most
Right.
people did.
And
No, I'm happy.
So there's cold IPA, there's West Coast, whatever your interpretation of that is. One of the three we talked about.
You like your illusion
Or-
of choice.
But we didn't get an answer though. Is the style tied to is it tied to value in any way? Because you had mentioned that was an element of it for Voodoo Rangers.
I think
success.
it has to be because
Okay.
we
This is a
know
large
that
format
small breweries
play,
have been
right?
making triple IPAs forever. These aren't on trend. They were on trend, and they probably still are. Hop Butcher makes triple IPAs every month, but that doesn't mean you can find them in the grocery store. We know you can with Voodoo Ranger, Imperial, whatever it's called.
How big
but
is
there's not that many others. There's now a Sierra one that's like 1 year old, and again, that one is doing really well for them. But that now it's like there's 50 other big breweries, and not all of them, but a big handful of them are going to follow suit, I believe.
It would be interesting to see if that does happen. It would have to start with the big guys who can afford to give this value alcohol proposition. And if it becomes big enough that the smaller guys start making that version of a beer without the value proposition.
Like Triple Jungle Boogie.
Right, like Triple
which
Jungle
just
Boogie.
came out this week.
Sure. But
All right,
but
so you have one immediate example, as usual.
right. No, but like something where you're seeing that happen more. It'd be interesting to see. Like, obviously, that's a third step down the path where it's like, okay, it has become a thing. Value has become associated with it. Can we take that thing and disassociate it from value and make it a more crafty thing where we're going to do a triple IPA, but it's going to cost $30 a 4-pack, but it's going to be from our brewery, so now you're going to buy it because you don't want that Voodoo Ranger stuff, the value version of it. You want the upmarket version of this.
So you're thinking it comes back to smaller breweries trying to make higher ABV things? Is that what?
I'm just curious if it becomes big enough for the little guys to try to carve out.
I think this is like a cul-de-sac.
I think this
right?
one is coming downward, where some trends go the other way. This one is one that I think has already happened.
I'm
It's
just
already
messing
there
around.
now.
I'm just trying to think of.
And because I think to offer it at those prices, you have to be pretty big.
Right.
They're so inefficient. The yields suck on them. But a brewery like New Belgium can get around that because they make so much of it because they're in 50 states. So very few are in 50 states, but you at least need some scale to be able to get it. Not necessarily at like $8.99 a 6-pack for a 9% beer or 9.3 or whatever it is. But to get it anywhere in the rough vicinity of that, it's hard to do when you're a couple thousand.
Right. This isn't like a multi-pack, 12-packs like play. This is a maybe 6-pack. I see this as a large format.
I mean, New Belgium's is also a $15.99 12-pack of 9% beer. $15.99 12-pack.
It's amazing.
How do you reconcile that with what I assume is a growth in smaller beers, more value or people prioritizing lower alcohol beers or that sector growing? Is that not growing?
I think it is. I think it's just two completely different people.
Okay.
Like literally, like the Venn diagram doesn't cross even 1%
Right.
on those people. There's people that like shop that
Alcohols
do
per
appreciate what a New Belgium or a Sierra Nevada bring in flavor wise, but are looking for the most alcohol for the money.
I mean, this was something that even at Pipeworks back in the day, we were aware of. We tried to not make too many decisions based on it, but we knew people liked their alcohols per dollar. So if we made a beer that had to be $9.99, $8.99, $12.99 a bomber, we're like, well, we can't make a 6% alcohol $12.99 bomber.
I think it might be slightly. Yes, I 100% agree that was definitely a consideration because I was selling those beers at the time, and I remember. And but I think it's slightly different because I don't want to speak for Doug, but I think what he's saying is people want they're shopping for value, and flavor is nice if they can get it. They don't want to go for Steel Reserve. Oh, I can get a Voodoo Ranger, and my dollar goes really far. I don't have to drink 3. I don't
like the way
drink
IPAs taste, but they also want to get wrecked for their dollar.
Right. Where I think for the bombers, in the bomber era, it was a misconception of alcohol percentage equaling cost of production. And it's not fair that this beer is only 4%, but it still is a $10 bomber because I should be getting 8% for that. I should be getting that much effort into the beer. Like and I think it was inaccurate of them, but I think that's where that was kind of coming from because those people would spend $10 a bomber and walk out with 6 bombers and like $60 for 66 ounces of beer, and you're like, well, I mean, that's certainly not a value thing.
What a great decision. Thank you so much for being able to
helping
pay my
local
rent for years.
Breweries, yes. And pay,
So let's bring back the bomber then.
My lease.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Anyway.
So moving away from IPA.
Yes.
The lager category, we're kind of coming full circle with the segment prior to this, but lagers, this is the one I'm most interested to follow because I don't know what breweries are going to do here, because I think the craft-centric consumer absolutely loves lagers. Lagers are growing at a nice, very healthy clip. They're not exploding. There's no year of the lager. It's just this nice gain every year where they're just a little bit more popular every year. It's great. Sustained success. But it's like you need a year-round lager is just not going to do it. If like a brewery is like, pick any brewery, Oscar Blues, Deschutes, whoever, a brewery of that size, like for them to just like release, say, hey, this is our new year-round lager. It's not that they won't sell some. It's very, very hard for them to make this one beer and one beer only that never changes, never gets riffed on, never gets to tell a continuous story of lager making. It's just this one beer that they're trying to sell all year round. It can be done. It's very, very hard, and it's very hard for that to work its way into a brewery like that's top 5 without the chance to evolve and get to change and be like a rotating lager that's changes with the seasons, because the kind of lager you want to drink in November isn't necessarily the one you want to drink in July. So it's hard to find that one style that's going to sustain success. So I don't know what's going to happen here. I do think some breweries are going to try to create like their own, like I think a very cool brand, one of my favorite brands that I'm pretty new to discovering, but that is huge, is Montucky Cold Snacks. I am fascinated by them. I think it tastes good. I don't mind having some of that in my fridge at all times. It's very cheap. But more importantly, I think the brand they created and just like the vibe around it, it's fascinating to me as someone who appreciates the marketing side of beer. And I will not be surprised if I see a bunch of breweries try to make their own version of that.
Oh, my God. I could not agree more.
Many of which will fall on their face. Maybe some of them will catch lightning in a bottle in their own way. There's a lot of ways to go about it.
It's like the Jack Links of beer,
but that,
right?
That beer's been around for 10 years already. And people are just going to like make their own.
But it's like just getting it. It's just like getting the attention now.
That's what I'm saying. Like breweries are just going to like be like, hey, that's cool. Let's do that in 1 year.
Exactly.
What about Solid Gold?
That, I believe, was a pretty big flop, right?
I still see it all over.
Founders you're talking about?
Yeah, Founders.
I don't see that anywhere.
I don't either.
Really?
I'm not saying it's dead, but I think that one crashed and burned compared to what they invested in it and hoped it was going to become the next thing to sip aside all day.
Of them
IPA.
did. all of them did at that time, and they were all going big into that.
15
They were
pack,
going to
24
that
pack.
door of the liquor store when they were trying to compete with the big formats. All the lager ones seem to have, all of them have failed. I think I can't think of a single one that really has done really well. The ones that are still around are the session IPA ones.
But what you're seeing, Doug, is that you think that larger breweries with production space and trying to compete in that space are trying to make a lifestyle, like light lager. Is that what the Montucky thing is?
I'm saying I don't know what anyone's going to do, but I know we're going to see attempts, and I'm trying to like wrap my brain around what they're going to be.
Yeah.
Because
Could not agree more, Doug.
Because I think making one year-round lager, if you're an IPA brewery or you're even like a Deschutes who maybe sells more porter than IPA, I don't think they do, but they sell a lot of Black Butte, to try to then work lager in, which I think a brewery of that size is going to want to do. They see the momentum that lager has. It's also very hard to do when it's not the number one or number two thing you do, and it's never going to be for most of these top 50 in size breweries. And I'm really only talking about them.
Yeah.
Obviously, anybody small can do their own thing, champion I'm talking about the ones that you see in the press releases. So this is mostly like, what are we going to see in the beer news?
So this
Right.
sounds to me
Not like a life-
Voodoo Ranger lager. Sorry,
No,
I
it's not like no. I mean, I think if anything, I stepped on what you were saying. It's not a lifestyle brand, but it's more like that.
Value?
What do you call it? No, I see it as a
vibe value.
yeah,
That's
like
what Montucky seems
but
to
the vibes, but almost like the like not like ironic. Like there's an ironic
Yes.
element to it. So I think that you're going to have people like play that. That's why I said like the Jack Links thing, because like
Irony's
like that
fucking
weird
dead,
like.
though,
A lot of
isn't it?
pit
Sorry, I didn't-
vipers on the Instagram pictures.
Yes, that sort of pit viper vibe. I think, it's dead, Mike, until somebody does it well and it resonates with people. And I think that Montucky Cold Snacks has resonated with people. And they're like, that's the right level, and it's the right type, and it's the right color scheme, and it's the right thing, and it's got the stallion running on it.
Yeah.
You know?
I think.
I mean, if someone has, like, an
is that what
IROC
Montucky's?
Z, you
I'm
know.
ignorant to this. Is that what Montucky's social media presence is? Is pit vipers and stuff? Ah, damn it!
A lot of it.
Because
A lot
I
of
was
men wearing low cut shirts.
I can't buy it anymore. I was buying
Like
it
Joe Dirt
because
kind of thing?
it was the devil you don't know, right? Every other like thing at that price point that tastes like that is full of things you don't want to buy as an elder millennial that has to engage in capitalism, for lack of a better term, right? Like you have to buy stuff, and like I wanted to buy it from people who aren't the people I know are Budweiser or are Miller, and I thought, this Montucky's fun, but knowing they're like the Pit Viper guys is just ruining it for me. And I'm probably like alienating.
I think ironic
a good
is-
chunk of the people that like this podcast.
Ironic
but
is the
stop wearing
perfect
Pit
word.
Vipers.
I'm not saying every Instagram post says that, but I'm just saying like ironic was the perfect word that Chris used. Like all the posts are like
I hate
them
irony.
being goofy in a serious way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have
Serious and
personal
goofy way.
qualms for that. That-
So the last one, this is partially from feeling out the rooms in CBC, actually going around to breweries in Minneapolis, but nothing new here. But non-alcoholic, I think like thousands of breweries right now, literally thousands, are figuring out a way to at least make a non-alcoholic beer, or alternatively, do a hop water. Every brewery I went to in Minneapolis had multiple hop waters on tap. If you go around in Chicago, I've never, maybe other than, I don't know, I'm very few. You don't see that. But like in Minneapolis, it was everywhere. Cans of not just one, but like one was like Galaxy something, one was Citrus something, and they were good. And they weren't expensive either. They were like relatively cheap. They weren't much more expensive than like Spindrift. A little bit more, but not much.
They weren't as good as Spindrift, were they?
Well, that's impossible.
Yeah.
So
He has to say that. He's contractually obligated to say that.
I have a T-shirt on the line if I say otherwise. No. So I think we're gonna see an overwhelming. It should be no surprise that we see more entrants to NA. I'm not blowing anyone's mind by saying that. I think we're gonna see an overwhelming number of NA beers, and this is one that I think where
Did you pick that specifically? Overwhelming amount? Like, do you think it's going to be an overwhelming wave of them? Like, way too many.
I think you guys are about to see an influx of and not even from breweries necessarily, but just people who are like, well, I don't need a brewing license to do this, and I'm good at branding.
Right.
So you're about to see a lot of stuff.
The big question problem I have, like, we would love to have a non-alcoholic beer or hop water on draft at our tap room at Revolution, but what it takes to make them the right way or the way we believe to be the best way, especially in a beer, but even a sparkling water, there's like a piece of equipment you have to buy that's like $500,000. So a lot of people are like, oh, why don't you just like make one and put it on your tap room? It's like, well, the thing you have to buy is so much that when you buy that, you kind of got to go big with it. And then once you go big with it, you're all of a sudden a brewery this big who's known for alcoholic beer, and you have to push an NA message. Athletic brewing is what they are because they get to sell the entire lifestyle of being alcohol free, and they don't have any conflict there. But you, on your like social media following you've developed over the last however many years you've been in existence, you're now trying to work in an NA occasion. Not saying it's not there, not saying you can push for the times where you want a little bit less, but it's a lot different than being able to sell the whole lifestyle like athletic. So you can't just look at athletic and go, oh, we could do that. If your bread and butter is alcoholic beer, it's going to be very, very hard.
Okay, so what's the breakdown going to be then of side brands that are vaguely associated versus small upstarts regionally that are purchased by larger local alcohol producing breweries?
Why do they need to be purchased by an alcohol producer? Why would they just be purchased by like a bottler or something? Like, why would an alcohol producer?
Why wouldn't the smaller but very large brewery not want to have that in their portfolio with branding that is separated, but the distribution channels? Because most of these like smaller local.
So you mean like Budweiser?
No, I mean like Rev.
Oh,
or not necessarily Rev, but like.
Rheingeist.
Regional breweries that used to exist, Rheingeist, sure. Why wouldn't they want to purchase a separate brand that has already established something that is, being followed a little bit, doesn't have huge distribution, but they can like now bring into their portfolio that isn't Rheingeist?
Let's follow up in 5 years.
The answer is because it's possible that the Rheingeist, if we're saying that sparkling or hop water brand is significantly smaller than Rheingeist, which is like 100,000 barrel brewery. The thought from Rheingeist would be like, if we put our name on this, it's instantly bigger and stronger than this company that's only a tenth our size or something like that. So
right, but you were saying they don't want to attach their name to something that would belie the message of you should drink alcohol.
Well, if we're talking about NA beer, I would say that there's literally only one. There's only one of any value, and that's Athletic.
Athletic, yeah.
That's it. I don't think there's any NA brewery worth purchasing. I'm not saying there's not ones that are making some progress and having some sales and doing well for themselves, but that are like an acquisition target of a top 50 brewery. I don't know of any.
Can we?
I think you just have to do what I think it was Big Red did when they made the flavor last longer and literally came out and said, this isn't good for our business because you're going to chew less of our gum. But we wanted the flavor to last longer. So that's how you market the NA beer.
We're here for you.
We're here for you.
We're the Big Red of non-booze beer.
Exactly.
Goldfinger. We're the Big Red of non-booze beer. Yeah. That's Goldfinger.
That's Coldfinger.
There we go. You got to keep it cold or else it'll blow up because you don't have a pasteurizer. So
yeah, Downers
the 350 north of
Cold Finger snacks. I don't know.
Yeah, Cold Finger snacks.
Cold Finger snacks.
Good idea.
We have a letter that I think we should get to because it addresses multiple people in the room. And it's an electronic letter. So those of you who would like to send us these letters, I'm sorry that I have not gotten to them gotten to all of them, but just make your letter that much better. It's okay. No.
Write us a better
or
letter.
Write an actual letter. Almost every handwritten or hand-mailed letter gets read. And all that info is in the show notes, and we always appreciate it. And it can be about whatever. It can be feedback. It can be responses to questions. It can be stuff that you just want to get our opinions on. So here we have one, and I'm just going to read it. It says, Dr. Strange Mike, not the preferred. You prefer to be Strange Mike
I'm whatever.
MD, or is it PhD?
I'm the people's person, so whatever
Strange
they
Mike
want to call
PhD, but Dr. Strange Mike is still accurate.
Yeah,
Dr. Strange Mike, Obi Chris Quinobi, and of course, Nostradouglas. Long-time listener, first-time electronic letter writer. Upon hearing about Goose Island's move into the NFC territory, I roll.
NFT. Mm-hmm. Not the football.
Chip, not the computer chip. Yeah.
I wanted to go back to previous episodes, especially episode 232, to see if this was predicted. I was surprised it wasn't, foreseen as the next hype BCS variant or the next big trend in beer. But the more I thought about it, I assume you are all just considering Dustcoin as the proto-NFT. Thus, Goose's play was just a way to steal Dust's shine. I would agree with that.
Classic.
Can we presume this will be the future of limited beer releases, even with small breweries? Or do you believe this is simply the Borg looking to maximize profits? Peace, a fan of the show. I will say thank you, a fan of the show. Definitely a longtime listener. If he's bringing up the Borg and all that, love it.
I know this person personally. I've had beers with him at the bar.
Okay.
Here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there
He's
you go.
a long-time listener to the show.
Yes. So, do we think? And I'll let Tom, even though he does not have a future seer.
What's your crypto portfolio looking like?
Right. Exactly. First of all, quick sidebar: is how's Dustcoin doing? Is it still like radically fluctuating, but only up?
Fluctuates, but just up.
Okay, wow.
Which
okay.
having forgotten I said that once,
Yeah.
it still went up. So
That's great.
Yeah,
That's good to know.
exponential zeros are still exponential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, I'm sure we mentioned it. It might have gotten edited out. There was a bunch of predictions that we edited out.
Yeah, sometimes we have to put the not financial advisors tag on the show, It's just not investment advice.
What also could they probably sue us for insider trading, because how else would you know? Stuff like that.
So I got a bunch of old
But do you
bottles
think this
staff.
NFT thing is going to be the future of limited beer releases, if not literally an NFT, but let's just take it like something outside of what is in the bottle, which is what I think the fan of the show might be getting at. Is this the future of limited beer releases, that it gives you something outside of the actual liquid? Interesting question.
I think Doug should go first.
Oh, okay. I think Tom should go first.
I think Tom should go first.
Sorry, Tom. I didn't mean to step
I
on
didn't.
your-
I did a lot of talking, but
I'm not even sure I understand what the question is.
Perfect. Well, there
maybe
you go.
I'll go first.
So we sandbagged Tom. Sorry, Tom.
So you mean like experiences?
Non-fungible tokens that look like gorillas.
Right. Are fungible or non-fungible
You can
things
use them on Twitter though.
going to be something that we see more with hyped releases, like the type you have to get into a lottery for? To give you an example, with your ticket, you not only get a bottle of the beer, but you also get this NFT. You also get, this beach towel that you can, you get a Floby.
I
I
still
mean,
have
I
the
don't know.
beach towel from last White Sox game. I went to.
Exactly. So is that going to be something that is just like, for say what you will about Bourbon County, it sets a lot of trends, and sometimes it takes a year or two. But a lot of things that they do are either setting or markers of where things are going. I will say, bellwethers perhaps is a better word.
So Tom,
yeah,
what's the financial future of the non-fungible beer world?
Well, we're betting totally on this for the future of our brewery. Our customers,
non-fungible process lagers.
Our customers said they wouldn't show up to the tap room until we offered NFTs outside of the beer.
Are you guys selling bits of a blockchain that represent decoction?
Yes.
Yeah.
As you decoct, they get created.
Sorry,
Yeah,
that's
each
probably
decoction is valued.
I'm sure what I said was so ignorant that it can't even be done.
I'm not qualified to really talk on this because I am so far removed from that. But one thing that I could contribute is just from the outside looking at some of these beer trading groups, of which I do not participate in, but I definitely enjoy
You're more
watching.
of a razzle guy. You don't trade, you just razzle.
Yeah.
It's not.
But
man.
you start to
above
see
board.
that kind of thing where it's not just a exchange of money. It's other things too. So I don't see why that
Like what?
wouldn't be.
Like what? Like just on the trading groups, like
Ju-
like money or something different.
like bourbon,
like some-
like thing.
Yeah, exactly. Things
Other
like how
completely
we'll toss
fungible.
in this like vintage something or other and this bottle of Bourbon County or something for this amount of money.
There was someone who recently
and then
tried
they
to
keep
razzle off a dog.
upping the ante. What?
Someone put a dog that was up for adoption as an option for something that you could trade for beer. Maybe that's just that I might have been caught in some fake news, but it seemed very real. But
I don't see why it wouldn't be, but I'm just filling in air right now because I don't participate in this.
Doug, will you explain to us what NFTs even really are?
Well, we know the most important thing about them, which is that they can't be funged.
They're not funged.
What else is there?
And their tokens.
No,
correct?
but anyway,
Yes, correct.
to the letter.
Yeah, I would
though.
think about it as I'll do my best here. A digital collectible that can be stored in a digital wallet. Best example would be like, think of your Apple Wallet. How now if you go to like a baseball game, you might get the ticket electronically and it appears in your Apple Wallet if you have an Apple phone. Think of a wallet like that lives on your phone where you have these other things. And it's not just, while there might be a picture associated with it or like a moving GIF or something, it's less about that, but it's really about what's behind the scenes in the code, which can be a contractual benefit that you get. That benefit could be something that is just like, if we're talking about beer, like anybody the 100 people that own one of these, and these things can't be copied because blockchain the chain comes from like chain of custody. You can see that the 100 of these that exist came from the brewery's wallet into the 100 holders, so they can't be faked or copied. So the 100 people that have these, the brewery can get in contact with them and offer them some benefit for being one of the 100 holders of whatever this picture of a monkey is. You can also get really creative and sophisticated, which no brewery is really ready for right now, but there's some really cool things you could do where you can offer like the chance to make buying an NFT also an investment in something where like, hey, do you want to be part of this thing we're trying to launch? If you're one of the NFT holders, by paying us like $300, $500, you also are now like a ambassador of it by being one of these people. And if this is successful going forward, we're going to give you 2% of future revenue as like a royalty that's split among the NFT holders and in perpetuity. And then because you know the wallet that these NFTs live in, anytime you pay out, kind of like paying a dividend, like I could buy a stock that pays a dividend in my E-Trade account, and then when they pay a dividend, it just appears in my account, and then I could sell that stock any minute I want, and then I'm no longer going to get those dividends going forward. You can do that with an NFT too, and it's really cool. And it could be a way for breweries to super engage their most engaged customers by making them incentivized to also like kind of help champion and represent something new or some piece of the brewery, that gets really complicated because you're now like, they're kind of like investors and the tax side of this. That's why this is like, to me, still years away. And with the all markets right now in like pretty bad shape, crypto included, but everything, there's going to be like a 6 to 18 month or maybe more recovery period before anybody gets bullish on this again. And then even then, there's going to be a lot of naysayers still, and craft beer will be one of the slowest people to get to this. But the potential is really cool. And if I back up to like the Goose Island example, Goose Island issued 2,000 of these roughly, and you got something very physical. You got 3 things that included like a barrel stave, an autographed tap handle, and something else. And then you got maybe some kind of access to beer, but it was just for this year. But where this could be, and I'm not saying they could do this, but I don't see why not. If all these NFT holders, if instead of all that, if they got the ability to every Black Friday walk to the Goose Island Fulton tap room and get a complete allocation of entire Bourbon County for life, assuming that Goose Island will always make Bourbon County and always will have a bunch of releases. They don't have to commit to there being 8 versus 6 versus 12 or however many they do. But whatever they make, if you're one of these 2,000 people, you don't have to go hunt around to stores and hope you get 3 of them at this store, then move on to the next one. You know that for the rest of your life, if you pay this $400, $500, you can do that. They don't lose. They get this guaranteed sale. Those people that have that could do it for 2 years, and then they could sell it. And then there's this open market of these where it's like semi-liquid where you can trade these. But to make these work, it's got to be something that like never ends. And that's really also tricky to offer as a brewery because you don't know what you're going to be doing in 3 years and all that. But that's why like Bourbon County is a good example, is something that's probably going nowhere anytime soon. It will always be a thing somewhat resembling what it is now. But that's what I think would be valued by people. And I think those would have sold out if it was a benefit like that, if it could be like in perpetuity. Tricky to do, but.
And they can add benefits to it later on, right?
Sure can, yep.
Yeah.
Because the more you can, in these contracts, they can make it so that if you sell one, you're welcome to sell it on the open market. They encourage you to. They can make it so 5% goes back to the brewery, or they can make it 5% goes to a charity of their choice. If they want to make it like, we're not trying to make money off this, but we want to have that component to it. And then that incentivizes the brewery to make these even cooler, put on their social media what NFT holders get. Then the people that missed out are going to want to go on the open marketplaces. There's like an eBay for NFTs where you can there's always some for sale, where you can then, they want to buy them, and it makes the value of them go up if you keep making the benefits cooler. I'm not saying this is like
it's like a
why would breweries
a
be
non-security.
incentivized to make something that only gets
It's a security
5%
that isn't
back?
regulated.
But I made
That's
up
what
the
it sounds
5%.
like.
You could make it 15%. You can make whatever you want.
Yeah, but why would you? Even if it's less than 100,
You don't have to. You could do 0. I mean, it's just the idea is that you want them to have value, or else the whole program dies.
But this is where I like why would the brewery be incentivized to make something that they get less than 100% of be cooler, like when they make a completely fungible product, right? Why would it be
The access
why would
to them
Goose
is non-fungible, I would say.
Right, but why would Goose Island be incentivized to make the access to this thing they already sold to someone, that if they make it cooler, they'll get 50% of the value of that back?
Because it
for the
could be
sale
a
of
it
it.
could be a
Because the
hook
sale of that
for
will be
repeat
so
sales. It's not free Bourbon County for life. It's free to the front of the line for life, which doesn't cost that person, doesn't cost Goose Island anything, because they're always going to sell it. And
But what you were saying is that they want to increase the value of it by offering more things.
No,
to
this
it,
is just
right?
a thing I added at the very end that's like another dynamic that some NFTs have. It's meant for artists to have a continuing, like if you're an artist and you sell $1,000 painting to someone, and then it becomes worth $10,000, and then that person sells it for $100,000, then they sold some for $1 million. You're sitting there and you made nothing off the appreciation of the value. This is something that if you keep pouring money into it appreciating in value, you have like a kickback that you get. And that's why I threw in like the charity thing. If you want to like avoid the blowback you would get from profiting off that, you could say, hey, anything we get from this goes to a charity. But in general, you want there to be an active marketplace for these that's higher than what you originally sold for them. That makes it healthy. If it's selling below what they originally sold for, that's unhealthy, and your program's going to implode on itself. So it's just on you to it's just a matter of over delivering on your promise, not under delivering. And that's, if you're going to do this, you want to make sure you have some things in mind to make people who did this pleasantly surprised, not disappointed.
Yeah. I mean, if it implodes, it's not the worst thing in the world. You just have the beer for sale, and doesn't matter if you have the NFT or not. Now, but let's get to the question, and we're a little long on time, so we don't have a ton. But I don't think fan of the show is asking for a breakdown of what an NFT was. He was asking, or they were asking, what do we see additional stuff outside of the beer? And this might be me putting words in their mouth, becoming more and more of a thing, or even things outside of the actual release, because this wasn't associated with the latest Bourbon County release. It was just like
it was their
Bourbon County.
It was like Bourbon County, some kind of anniversary of Bourbon County.
Sure, but it wasn't like for the release.
I was trying to answer him. I was trying to say yes. I think we're in a bad time with NFTs and crypto and anything, any place to put your money right now. So I think there's going to be a long delay, but I do think these are going to be, I wouldn't say the words the future, but they're going to be a future for many. Just like a certain style of beer that's going to get popular is going to be a thing for a lot of breweries, but not necessarily all breweries. I think these will absolutely become a thing, and I think breweries are going to eventually get pretty creative with ways to use them as a way to build a extra loyal fan base by giving them some kind of, again, it'd be really cool if it was some kind of like you become a mini investor in the company or an investor in some kind of like initiative they're launching by being the NFT holder. It's like buying a share of stock in the business or in an aspect of the business.
I think dumbing it down a little bit. This has been going on for a while. I mean, you have like, remember when the brewery had their thing? They had like their society of like, you had to
order.
Be in the thing, and then if you ordered enough, then you were offered into the hoarder society. But you had to buy enough to be even, and then the hoarders got extra stuff. I think it's very much in the same vein as that, where you can kind of divvy up and allocate it, but it would almost be like if you I could almost see it like if you do this, then you have access to the NFT, you then own the NFT, and then you can sell your rights to hoarders level stuff in the future. You know, like you always have access to whatever we decide. It doesn't even need to be Bourbon County. It can be anything, and it can be it could be like being in a damn mug club. I mean, it can be whatever you want it to be.
You spend this much, you get this token that gets you something, and if you want to sell that token that you earned, you could sell it, and it's all digital. There's no thing you stick in your wallet. You can do it.
Seems like another little way to get people to continue to line up.
So the digital aspect is the only thing that we don't currently do, but we do do a like Goldfinger does a lager loyalty club, and they get to skip the line at Oktoberfest as members. They get to have first dibs on any new releases and stuff like that. But
this is like a high-tech way of same old things, because like Mike's saying, it's still a tangible thing that we're doing here. So you're just like making a digital component to loyalty.
What's the incentive for the brewery to create a token that they don't control anymore, though? Like, why would, like, you get to, like, if someone's a complete jerk, you can kick them out of your lager loyalty club.
Yep.
They also can't just, like, transfer their lager loyalty club to someone else, and then you have to deal with that person. What's the incentive to the brewery to want to create this token that is completely transferable without the... But it's not loyalty. It's loyalty from a completely different way. Like it's not loyalty to, it's loyalty to value, not loyalty to that brand necessarily.
disagree, but I think Chris needs us to wrap
I
up.
think we need to wrap up.
Okay.
We've gone a little bit long, but hey, leave them wanting more. And by more, I mean
Probably less.
they've stopped listening 45 minutes ago. But I want to thank everybody for coming by, and it was a solid show. Enjoyed the conversation. Thanks to the Fade Master for letting me know how far over we are on time. Thanks for Mike for being the co-host as always. Why don't you do the second half? Thank the second two people. We should do everything double or half.
Thanks to Nostradouglas and Thomas Aquinas. I don't know, like some other name of the. What's your soothsayer name?
I mean, putting him on the
Thomas of Goldfinger.
Oh, I got a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, what is it?
TB is your initials.
Yep.
TBD, to be determined.
There you go.
Tommy TBD. Yeah,
I like it.
that's a gambler.
like it.
That's a gambler name though. Tommy TBD. Yes.
TBD. All right. Thanks to TBD then.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah,
course.
absolutely. And thanks to everyone who's been listening. Again, if you want to send us any emails, we would very much, electronic letters or actual letters.
Yeah.
Check out the show notes. I'll make it short but sweet. We'll be back next week. So long, everyone.
Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember this is what we wanted.